Hello, audience. Have a good afternoon. It's an honor to present this. I give you a short oversight of the regulation, very short oversight of the CTS and what's in it for the public, meaning public trial participants as well. Next slide, please. Okay, disclaimer. The next one. Okay, so where do we come from? Before May 2004, we had the directive. Before the directive, national rules, different processes, requirements for authorization in each of the member states resulted in delays, complications, complete lack of any harmonization. Then we had the directive 2001-20. Since May 2004, it led to UDRACT, the first step in harmonized processes and requirements for clinical trial authorizations. The introduction of the electronic application form, which we all know, but still not much harmonization in the requirements between member states. Then we have the clinical trials regulation, the 536, published in May 2014, much more harmonization in the dossier requirements, combined assessment of multinational trials. The precondition is to have the clinical trial information system, CTS, available. Fully electronic dossier, and with this also increased transparency, which is also the aim of the regulation. So this is why we explain where we come from, directive, now regulation. So CTS, and the Clinical Trials Information System, is the business tool of the regulation. CTS harmonizes the submission, assessment, and supervision of clinical trials. For the public, it facilitates large-scale trials to address key health issues, COVID, the cancer plan. It enables knowledge sharing and expert collaboration in the Union, as such fostering research, innovation, and it assures that Europe remains an attractive clinical trials research hub. Very important for the Union. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Just an overview on how CTS technically works. At the bottom, you have, in fact, 3 workspaces: a sponsor workspace for sponsors, an authority workspace for member states and ethics, also European Commission, small part for EMA. Then you have the third space, and this is the public website, data accessible for the public, open access for everyone with an internet connection. So the 3 workspaces, and above you have each of the user groups. Next slide, please. Okay, just to tell you about what CTS is, digitalization and improved efficiency, a single entry point for clinical trial applications, so for dossiers. So in contrast with the directive, a sponsor had to submit a package to the agencies and to the ethics. And this has to be done for each member state. With CTS, it's a single entry point for the Union. Single application, maintenance process, timelines, dossier covering the clinical trial application, covering the whole life cycle of a clinical trial, doing the electronic exchange for agencies and for ethics. Because everything is electronic, it's easily registered in a public register and made public. So harmonization, because we have a single dossier for Europe, end-to-end application procedures covering the whole life cycle. It also facilitates the coordination in evaluation and supervision of clinical trials for the member states, full electronic exchange between sponsors and member states. No need to have mails. Everything goes through the portal, through CTS, and it's also a secured digital archive. So in fact, the users of CTS have no need to copy anything locally. Everything is in the portal, remains in the portal. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. Increased transparency. So it offers a searchable clinical trial information to the patient, healthcare professional, general public. Clinical trial results available in lay language. Very important. Information can be retrieved for the life cycle of a clinical trial or investigational product across trials through the search engine. Next slide, please. Okay, so patient safety is enhanced in clinical trials because also CTS provides an end-to-end electronic solution for safety. CTS facilitates harmonized assessment in Europe. So protocol investigators brochure for a multinational trial. This you have to send in only once. The informed consent, contract, assurance, this you have to do for each site. This is still national domain, but the most important items, protocol, investigators brochure, this is all in CTS only once per trial. So the clinical trial module of EuroVigilance has an automated rerouting to member states. This facilitates sponsors. CTS provides a single decision per member state, meaning the ethics and the agency both provide their opinion, and there is at the end one single decision per member state. And it also has an electronic ASR repository for the member states. Next slide, please. So to support innovation and research, unique, intuitive tool that facilitates submission of clinical trials. Also for the investigation of rare diseases, it also supports academic innovative work. It offers structured data to allow efficient reporting for scientists. But in fact, data is becoming the new gold. And the clinical trial can be extended to more member states. This is the Article 14, the additional member state concerned. So you have a trial that is in most of the countries perhaps not recruiting very well. You can easily add an additional member state. In theory, the protocol investigators brochure does not to be re-evaluated again. So the implemented timelines, any timeline in CTS can be shortened. So it allows a mechanism to speed up recruiting in your trial. If it would not recruit very well, you can easily add additional member states for this without, in fact, re-evaluation of the protocol. Next slide, please. Okay, so the transition period after the go live. After the go live, member states will use CTS from the start. Member states have to. Sponsors can use a transition period of 3 years. This implies when CTS goes live 31st of January 22, the first year, a sponsor can decide whether for initial dossier, I follow the directive or I use the regulation. After January 23, all initials have to go through the regulation, and 2 years later, in January 25, everything what's ongoing has to transition to the regulation. So this means that the available data in CTS open to the public will gradually start to accumulate, to grow. It will go slowly. With each trial that goes in the regulation, the amount of data available increases. Next slide, please. Okay, so legal basis for the transparency in the regulation. I will not repeat everything what's stated. There's a legal basis for this, Article 81. And this is important, shall be publicly available unless for all or part of the data that information contained herein confidentiality is justified on any of the following grounds: personal data according to GDPR, and of course the commercially confidential information CCI, in particular taking into account the status of marketing authorization. Protecting confidential communication between member states in the assessment of the in preparation of the assessment, and to assure a effective supervision of the conduct of a clinical trial. So, in fact, by stating everything is public except those 4 items. Okay, next slide. So data and documents of an application that it's under evaluation. So I'm expanding on the transparency rules. Will not be made public unless there's an overriding public interest. For example, in COVID, this is overriding public interest. Only application on which a decision has been reached will be made public. All data and documents in the system will be made public with some exceptions. Default is always to make public at the first opportunity, moment of decision. Sponsors have option to defer the timing of publication via a deferral mechanism. And sponsors have to indicate this when they submit a trial. They have to motivate the reason for deferral, and the member states have to confirm this. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea on how the public search works, data will accumulate with each dossier coming into the regulation, each trial application. So it will grow. There's a basic search based on free text, and there's an advanced search. First, the basic one, we can say contain all of these terms, any of these terms, does not contain any of these terms. Next slide, please. So this was the basic search. Here we have the advanced search for the public. So no login is required, and you can start to drill further on trial information, sponsors, endpoint, therapeutic areas, rare diseases, the PIPs, and so on, vulnerable population. A wealth of information goes public. Next slide, please. So results can be sorted. I'm just showing, these are screenshots from the system that goes live. So you have there 2 trials. One is withdrawn, the other one is authorized, and you also see it whether recruitment has started. It's also available with the start dates also mentioned. So anyone can easily start to see how the trial is really going ahead. Next slide, please. So display of options of the searches. It's possible to search on the data, what you want as results. Really extensive. Title of a trial, trial number. You can easily filter on this. Next slide, please. Okay, what will not be made public? So we remember everything that relates to GDPR, data protection, everything that relates to CCI, company confidential information, everything what relates to quality of a medicinal product, the IMPD, it's the investigational product document. This will not be made public. Scientific advices on quality. Requests for information related to quality will not be made public. quality assessment reports? No, but this means the clinical ones will be made public. Drafts will not be documents which were labeled not for publication. The financial agreements between sponsor and the investigational site can be sensitive, will not be made public. And any request for information from member state to the sponsor and responses recorded outside the assessment of an application will not be made public. But in fact, a whole lot of information will be made public. Thank you for your time.